relationship is when we think the spouse is doing us wrong, or we feel like we're not being treated properly. One of the biggest things that's happened in my life is God giving me eyes to see that different than a slight against me. And in not seeing it as a slight against me or a transgression against me, it's really allowed me to be there for them when they needed me the most. Because if I take it as a slight or a transgression, they're already in the pit. That's why they're acting that way. So if I take it as a slight or a transgression, then I can't be there for them. Now I feel like, now I'm in the pit now. Now we're both in the pit.
Right.
And now not only are we both in the pit, we're against each other in the pit. And now the whole thing's become exasperated. Right? And so what happens is when you can see it not as a slight or a transgression, but see it as the one that you love is suffering at the hands of something in the world, man, it changes the whole thing. If you really believed it was the result of them suffering, you wouldn't be upset. Let's just be honest. I mean, you wouldn't be upset. It's like if you ever notice, like when you're driving in a car and somebody cuts you off or somebody does something, maybe they don't see that the light turned green and so they don't go, and then they go right when it turns yellow, and then you get stuck at the red light. You ever notice when somebody does that, you get real angry?
Yeah.
You get mad. You feel like they're not considerate.
Right.
They're not considering you. They're not considering yourself. But have you ever noticed that when they acknowledge it, when they, sorry, you ever notice how you don't really care as much?
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh yeah, who cares?
It diffuses it.
It's like the thing that made you care was the thought that they weren't considering you.
Right.
And it's the same thing in our relationships. When our spouse is has shortcomings or are falling short in a certain area, or just not, whatever you want to call it, not acting right, whatever you want to call it, the thing that brings us the pain is we think they're being inconsiderate of us. But that's not what's going on. They're suffering. That's what's going on. It's like if a woman, if a woman's driving in front of me and maybe she didn't see the light turn green at all, and she waited the whole time, and none of us got to go. And I'm just busy freaking out, thinking, what the hell is wrong with that woman? Losing my mind. She shouldn't be driving in a car. She shouldn't have a license. You know where it goes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, but now imagine if I could see that woman just left the hospital and her husband died. And the reason she didn't go is because she's sitting in her car crying, trying to figure out how she's going to survive or live, how she's going to make it without this man she's been with for 40 years. Do you think I'm going to care about the light? No. I'm going to care about, man, maybe I can pray for that woman. And see, we don't seem to have eyes for our spouses like that, or our friends or anybody in those types of situations. We immediately jump to, they're inconsiderate. We don't look at it as they're being taken captive by something in this world that's causing them to suffer. And that's why they're doing it.
And that can be in the most heinous ways, even marital infidelity.
Yep.
It can be, it's not just everyday things. It can be seriously.
Yeah. And that's why it can be so difficult, especially infidelity, because the way the wisdom of the world comes against woman is it tries to teach the woman to be justified in the man or becoming equal to or above the man, as if they're not equal already. Right. Ladies, you don't have to try to prove you're equal, you are equal. The very foundation from where you think you have to prove you're equal declares that you don't believe you're equal. God's declared the equality of all people. Men and women are the same. But if infidelity, if the woman isn't trying to be justified in the man, she won't interpret the infidelity as being that there's something wrong with her. The blow becomes, listen, it's still not a nice thing, but the blow becomes much less if the woman doesn't think it has something to do with her. If she knows it only has to do with him and his suffering, his pain, his inability to deal with the feeling of lack, his inability to realize what he has in God. See, then she comes alongside of him because she's not suffering at the hand of his transgression. She sees he's suffering. reconciliation can happen then. And not only can reconciliation happen, but through the woman loving the man in that place, the man can be touched by the love of God and find himself looking to God and feeling, I lack no good thing. And then he could be set free from the thing that caused the infidelity to begin with. We're not so fragile, man, that the things that happen in our relationships can now overcome the relationship.
Right.
It's all based on how we view it. It's all based on how we see it and what we believe about it.
Yeah. Hey, Gwen.